In just 1 year, Canada's government kicked off this massive reset, completely overhauling everything from our wallets to our place on the world stage. In this explainer, we're going to break down this really ambitious and, yeah, kind of risky blueprint for Canada's future and figure out what it all really means. So, to really get the scale of this whole thing, you have to rewind and look at the situation the new government walked into. I mean, Canadians were facing a perfect storm, a housing crisis that was just out of control, the cost of living was squeezing everybody, and our relationships with key global partners were, let's say, tense. It was a time of some serious economic anxiety. So, what did they do about it? Well, they didn't go for small tweaks. No, they launched an ambitious all-fronts overhaul in their very first year. Let's dive in and walk through exactly what that looked like, starting with the changes that you'd feel closest to home. All right, so the first part of this big reset was all about the domestic front, tackling those immediate challenges people were feeling in their bank accounts and in their hunt for a place to call home. Okay, one of the first and definitely most controversial moves was getting rid of the consumer carbon tax. The thinking here was simple: give people instant relief at the gas pump and on their heating bills. But, and this is a big but, the tax on large industrial polluters is still there. So it really begs the question, without that price signal for consumers, how is Canada going to hit its long-term climate targets? And this wasn't just a one-off thing. It was a full-on, multi-pronged attack on the cost of living. The lowest federal income tax rate got a trim, they brought in a temporary tax break for first-time homebuyers, and the old GST credit got a makeover, becoming this new groceries and essentials benefit. The whole theme was crystal clear: get more money back into people's pockets, and fast. And to go after the housing crisis head-on, the government set up a whole new federal agency, Build Canada Homes. Its entire mission, its whole reason for being, is to slash red tape, finance huge construction projects, and just get more homes built, period. Now here's another huge piece of the puzzle on the home front. To take some of the intense pressure off of housing and services, the government made a pretty dramatic cut to the number of temporary immigrants. But at the very same time, they kept the targets for permanent residents right where they were, trying to strike a much more sustainable balance when it comes to population growth. But listen, this whole reset wasn't just about what was happening at home. Oh no, it was matched by a total flurry of activity on the world stage, creating a brand new global playbook to reshape how Canada does trade, defense, and investment. One of the absolute biggest moves was a major trade reset with China. I mean, after years of these sky-high tariffs that basically locked Canadian canola out of the market, a deal was struck. And look at this. It slashed the rate from a whopping 85% all the way down to just 15%. This single-handedly reopened an absolutely critical market for our farmers. But, and this is so important to understand, this deal came with a massive trade-off. See, in exchange for getting our agriculture and seafood back into their market, Canada had to dramatically lower its own tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. So while it's a huge win for farmers, it creates a brand new, very real competitive challenge for Canada's own growing EV industry. The strategy wasn't just about China, though. It was about diversifying. You can see this really concerted push to build out new partnerships all over the world, laying the groundwork with India on energy and tech, locking in a formal alliance with Australia on critical minerals and AI, updating our trade deal with the EU for the digital age, and even signing a brand new free trade agreement with Indonesia. And right alongside those trade deals, we saw this huge injection of foreign capital. A deal was made with the United Arab Emirates to invest $70 billion into Canadian infrastructure and other projects. I mean, that's a massive amount of money aimed at helping build out the country's economic backbone. And on the defense file, after years of getting heat from our allies, the government finally committed to meeting that 2% of GDP spending target for NATO. This means a lot more investment in things like Arctic security and cyber defense, plus much deeper military cooperation with allies in both Europe and the Indo-Pacific. So beyond all the immediate fixes and foreign policy moves, a huge chunk of this reset is all about the long game. We're talking about major nation-building projects designed to lay a foundation for the future that'll pay off for decades. And at the heart of that vision, a $60 billion nation-building infrastructure program. Now, this isn't for paving a few roads here and there. This is a fund for those huge foundational projects meant to give Canada's entire economic competitiveness a serious boost. And you can see that money is really targeted. It's going towards expanding our energy grid with nuclear and LNG, developing our critical mineral resources, upgrading our trade lifelines like ports and railways, and this is really key, helping to actually commercialize Canada's research muscle in fields like AI and quantum computing. There's also been a really fundamental shift in how these huge projects even get off the ground. This new model of Indigenous equity partnerships tries to move beyond just consultation and into actual co-ownership. The goal is to give communities a direct financial stake in the benefits, which in theory should also make getting these projects approved a whole lot smoother. So the big question is, when do we actually see the results from all this? Well, it's not going to happen all at once. Think of it more like waves. The benefits from those agricultural trade deals, we should see those pretty quickly. But a real increase in housing supply, that's going to take a few years to really show up. And the biggest infrastructure and defense projects, well, those are 5, 10, even 15-year plays. Okay, so after a year of just this whirlwind of activity, what does it all add up to? Let's try and break down this very ambitious gamble. You know, a quote from the source material really just hits the nail on the head here. Success will depend less on the announcements themselves than on their execution. It's one thing to announce a bold plan, right? It's another thing entirely to actually make it happen. The real test isn't the blueprint, it's the follow-through. And that leaves us with the central lingering question. A new blueprint for Canada has been drawn, touching pretty much every single aspect of how this country works at home and abroad. It is a truly ambitious vision. But can this grand plan overcome all the incredible complexities of actually getting it done in the years ahead? The answer to that question is probably going to define the next decade for all of us.